Ready? All right, we're going to get started. First of all, thank you all for coming. I want to introduce my associate. He's an attorney, criminal defense attorney, Antonio Lopez Hutchison, and the lead investigator in this case, Dean Terraconi. So I'd like to start with addressing the allegations that were referenced by the sheriff, Donnie Youngblood, that there was some allegation of sexual assault of a minor. We have a reasonable basis to believe and conclude that that allegation is absolutely not reliable. It's not true. It did not occur. We also have a reasonable basis to conclude that there was no corroboration, there was no corroborative evidence seized from Mr. Scrivner's home. We also have a reasonable basis to conclude that the so-called altercation that occurred at the residence involved an incident that concerned a disarming of Mr. Scrivner. As the sheriff indicated, there was a report that he may have been suicidal. The so-called altercation did not involve Mr. Scrivner brandishing a weapon, pointing a weapon, trying to assault anyone. There was an attempt to take the firearm from Mr. Scrivner so that he would not use it against himself. That's the basis of the evidence. It did not involve anything more than that. And as the sheriff indicated, at some point it was reported that Mr. Scrivner was disarmed, but it involved solely him trying to use the firearm against himself. And that resulted in the stabbing that the sheriff indicated. But the situation involved Mr. Scrivner being distraught over the pending divorce, and that's what contributed to the statement that the sheriff made that he was suicidal. So that is where we are in terms of the evidence. We, as I indicated, have a reasonable basis to believe these allegations are not reliable. So I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
Is Scrivner going to resign?
Well, I don't know. I'm not prepared to answer that.
Where on earth did any of these allegations come from if they have no backing?
Well, right now, you know, to me it's remarkable that the sheriff would come out at this point without conducting a full investigation and make allegations like that. This incident happened, what, about 48 hours ago or so? There has not been a full vetting of the allegations, a full investigation of the allegations. And now you have statements being made that have impugned the integrity of a man that has dedicated his life to public service. He was involved as a council member for many years, dedicated public servant, served on the Board of Supervisors, and has done so much for this county and so much for this community. And I'll tell you right now, he deserves better. Doesn't deserve to be fronted out and these allegations being made in public without a full and thorough and objective investigation.
So where on earth did those allegations come from if there is no backing?
An allegation can be made, doesn't mean that it is true or that it's reliable. We are still in the course of investigating this, but I can tell you this. There's an absence of corroboration that was taken. The sheriff said that there was possible corroboration or evidence, physical evidence taken from the home, we have reason to believe that that did not occur, or that there is no such evidence.
What about the substances that were taken from there? Were things about magic mushrooms, among other things?
I have no knowledge of that.
Does he admit to?
I have no knowledge of that. Yeah.
Where is Mr. Scrivner now?
That's confidential. We know where he is.
How are you contacted to represent Mr. Scrivner?
I'm not going to answer that.
Is he at the hospital?
I'm not going to answer that.
Does he have a message for his kids or anyone else that he serves in this community?
I can tell you this, Mr. Scrivner is a absolutely dedicated father. He loves his children. He would never do anything to harm his children. He cares for them, feeds them, clothes them. He's absolutely committed to his children. He loves his children. And I can tell you this, he's very distraught that they're going through this.
So why would his son stab his father?
We have reason to believe that it was over the gun that Mr. Scrivner was about to use on himself. They were trying to disarm him. And ultimately, they were able to remove the gun.
And in the course of that, the son somehow stabbed him?
Again, this is very early in the investigation, but we have reason to believe that the answer to that is yes.
Have you spoken with your client?
I'm not going to answer that. But yes, I mean, I've had some contact with him, obviously.
What's his state of mind?
Well, he is very distraught that this is all happening. I mean, he, like I said, loves his family, loves his children, and we're asking that people keep an open mind right now, not rush to judgment, not make conclusions or assumptions. And this is why what happened this afternoon concerning the press conference is so disturbing. This is early on in the investigation. These allegations are being made, and there hasn't been a full investigation made of those allegations. And he is very distraught that his family, particularly his children, who are in local schools, have to go through this.
Do you know if he's subjected himself to a blood test at all for one of these substances at all? Or are they allowed to do that during the 5150 hold?
I'm not going to confirm.
Is
Yeah.
CPS involved in this?
I'm not, not to my knowledge.
Have you had any contact with his family?
I'm not going to answer that.
Who retained you for this?
I'm not going to answer that.
Is he
That's
still
confidential.
on suicide watch?
I have no knowledge of that.
Have you been in contact with Ms. Scrivner?
With
Reached out?
who?
Mrs. Scrivner?
No.
But the sheriff said that there was a protective order so that Scrivner cannot approach his children.
That is routine in cases where there is a domestic disturbance. It's called an emergency protective order. And in an overabundance of caution, police officers, deputy sheriffs do that. It's not unusual at all.
He is not at this point been booked into jail and released or anything like that.
That's correct.
What was the cause of this quote-unquote psychotic episode?
We don't know at this point. I can tell you it's related to him being very distraught over the divorce that apparently his wife filed for dissolution recently.
Are the two of them still living together?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know.
You mentioned allegations that were in infancy stage. Is there a pending lawsuit that you're considering against the sheriff's office of the county?
No, not at this point.
Do you expect your client to be charged?
I hope not. I mean, we hope that when the investigation is concluded and we're going to be, or we are in the process of conducting our investigation, that we will present evidence to show that these allegations are not reliable and cannot be sustained nor proved beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a standard. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you believe that this should be taken out of Kirk County's jurisdiction?
What do you mean by that?
Well, the sheriff had mentioned that they were planning on bringing in the Attorney General and also bringing in Tulare County as well.
Well, the reason is, as you all know, the district attorney is related to Mr. Scrivner. She is a very ethical prosecutor, and obviously there is a conflict. So she would not be involved in this particular case. So what happens is the case is usually, if at all, referred to the Attorney General or a neighboring county.
Who's doing the allegations?
What's that?
The allegations for?
I'm not going to answer that at this point.
What do you make of the fact that the sheriff said that Zimmer called him directly instead of calling 911?
Well, I have to assume from that because of the relationship that they have, she was concerned for his safety and thought that he could assist in addressing that issue.
But isn't that what 911 is for, you know, to handle emergencies?
Not necessarily. I mean, sometimes you have, because I deal with 911 calls all the time, and that's when people are reporting a crime, commission of a crime. And that they need first responders, usually police officers, to respond to either stop a crime, prevent it from happening. Those are the situations that I've encountered where 911 calls are made.
Who was it that contacted Zimmer? Do you know?
Contacted.
About her nephew the night of the
No, I
incident?
don't know.
You mentioned quite a few times that Scrivner is very much a family man. I mean, what kind of father would do that action, you know, pull a gun to himself in front of his children, for all those events to happen?
You know, sometimes people react differently when emotions are involved in a dissolution of a family, particularly where it's important for the children to have the family intact, and that could create an emotional response. I mean, it's different for everybody. It's not like he did that intentionally to somehow affect his children in an adverse way. It just happened. And the so-called altercation was over removing the gun from him so he wouldn't use it on himself.
The sheriff mentioned there were 30 firearms removed from Scrivner's house. What's going to happen to those firearms? Is it normal that they be kept away? Should they be returned to him, or should they be not returned?
Well, again, in a domestic disturbance situation, it's routine for officers to remove all firearms from a location. Eventually, those firearms, we expect, because we believe there should not be a filing of any criminal charges against him, eventually they should be returned.
Firearms turned into electronics, including his own phone. Why is that?
I'm sorry?
The firearms, and as well as the tons of ammo that was seized, that also turned into electronics as well as his phone being seized. Why is that? Why would they do that?
It's routine in investigations, particularly where there's an allegation like this. They will seize the electronics. But I can tell you, we have reasonable basis to believe there's nothing inappropriate in the memory of any of those electronic devices, nor on his phone.
A lot of these allegations you're mentioning again are not to be found, but I mean, who uses a knife against someone that has a gun to themselves?
Well, if I don't know, I wasn't there. If there's some kind of a struggle to get the gun, I mean, and the knife was used, but I can tell you one thing: it was not because the gun was being used towards anybody else. He was trying to take it to use it against himself.
Do you
And
think that there was intent of harm to use that knife? I mean,
well, yeah, if someone gets stabbed, yes. I mean, they want to stop someone, but, you know, as far as an intent to harm someone, I don't think you can say that because there's no evidence of that. Someone can use a knife to stop what was happening, which is he was trying to get the gun and use it on himself.
Is part of your guys' investigation whether or not he was on any kind of substance during this this entire episode?
I don't know, that's something that is considered in the course of the investigation, yes.
Yeah, what do you have to say about the specific shrooms, that drug itself? I mean, they were very specific about what they believe they had found.
Well, I don't have any knowledge of that, and I don't know anything about that.
What is your retainer fee?
I'm not going to discuss that. Come on.
Based on whose account are you telling us about this altercation? How did you find out about this? Who did you speak with?
What do you mean?
I mean, you're speaking in some detail about this gun and this knife, and they're trying to take it away. Based on what knowledge? Who do you speak
Well,
with? that
did the
gave you-
sheriff tell you what knowledge he had? No, he didn't,
No,
did
but I'm
he?
asking
He
you.
said he believed the allegations or he wouldn't be there. We believe that Mr. Scrivner did not commit these offenses, nor is he guilty of any crime, and we firmly believe that, and we have a reasonable basis to believe that.
Have you spoken with family members about what happened at the
I'm not
scene?
going to answer that.
What's the status of Mr. Scrivner now? Is he out of the hospital?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay, but he hasn't been booked yet.
What do you mean yet?
I mean-
He hasn't been booked, that's correct.
He has not been booked,
Yeah.
but that could change obviously as the investigation continues.
Well, anything can change, but we believe that the evidence doesn't support any kind of a prosecution involving sexual assault. We firmly believe that cannot be proved beyond a reasonable doubt.
So the sheriff has a narrative of what happened, or they believe happened. Do you have a narrative of what happened that day? Can you take us through?
I think we just covered that.
Well, it's been broken up in bits and pieces.
Well, that's all I have to say about that. I'm not going to repeat
Tell us
myself.
about that. How is the family doing right now? The children, the mother, the grandmother.
I can tell you everyone is distraught because of all this public attention. I mean, this is what happens when allegations that have not been fully vetted or investigation get out there. People start thinking the worst. I mean, there are all sorts of posts involving preposterous allegations that have absolutely no basis in fact. And so when family members, particularly children who are in school, hear this and other children repeat allegations, of course it's going to have a very negative impact on them emotionally. You know, and they're very upset that these allegations are being said out in the public domain where they have not been fully vetted nor investigated. And that's the problem with it. With this, people jump to conclusions, they make assumptions, they rush to judgment, and I'll tell you, Mr. Scrivner deserves better than that. He deserves better than that. You know, he has committed his life to public service, and at least we should give him the benefit of that doubt and respect his privacy. And all these allegations swirling out there where there hasn't been proof, in my view, is inappropriate.
Do you believe the 5150 hold is warranted then?
I'm not going to address the 5150 hold. I don't have any evidence of that.
You said you're confident about no proof of these allegations are true. Do you feel confident that he won't be arrested after he's released from work?
I feel confident that he won't, because when they do a thorough investigation, we expect that there will be a conclusion these allegations cannot be proved, that they're just not reliable. And we hope that to be the case, but obviously I can't predict the future. I'm telling you, based on what we know, just as the sheriff did, he had his belief. We have a reasonable basis to believe these allegations are not reliable.
Now, this all happened yesterday, and we reached out to the Kern County Sheriff's Office, DA's office. They were very tentative about this all yesterday up until today. Do you think they should have spoken sooner about everything that happened?
I think they should have vetted the allegations and conducted a diligent investigation first. I mean, I think that's not unreasonable to expect that. And I don't think that allegations should be made and put out into the public domain when an alleged incident just happened 48 hours, particularly when you have someone with the sort of high visibility that Mr. Scrivner has.
Yeah,
I mean-
they didn't even, comment, they had said no comment, do you feel like that just kind of hiding things a little bit more?
I don't think they were hiding anything. I think
Or hiding, sorry.
I'm
Hiding.
well, sure, and then people began to make all sorts of assumptions. You know, I mean, they had images in the on television where they're bringing bags out of the house. You know, people were thinking, "What's in there? What's you know?" That I think contributes to what you're saying, and it just folks need to. You know, walk it back a little bit and keep an open mind and not jump to conclusions and assumptions as to what happened.
So why didn't you all speak sooner?
What do you mean, wait a
I
minute?
don't
This is
think
pretty
that's
soon.
obvious, so-
This is pretty soon,
I mean, yesterday.
you know? Well, because nothing had been said. I mean, we chose to speak now in response to what the sheriff said. You know, because, I mean, I don't think it's fair nor appropriate to be making allegations against somebody, you know, this early on when you haven't completed your investigation and fully vetted these allegations. We want to respond to that and tell people that there's other, you know, another side to this, and that folks should not jump to conclusions or rush to judgment.
Should criminal,
It's just not appropriate that happen. I mean, and as I told one of you, once that toothpaste gets out of the tube, you can't put it back in, right?
I was gonna ask, should criminal charges be filed? Do you prefer the AG handle it or another county?
Doesn't matter to me. Truth is the truth, right?
Any timeline on when the investigation may be done and you'll see what lays ahead?
As the sheriff said, I think it's going to take a while because they're doing as they are supposed to do their due diligence in fully investigating this. It's difficult to tell, you know, how long it's going to take, but it's going to take longer than usual because they're not going to be able to use the resources of this county. So, yeah.
Back on the response of the timeliness of the response, I mean, shouldn't that be more of a, I guess, higher standard because he is a public official, I mean, a county supervisor?
What do you mean the timeliness of the response?
Just given, you know, that yesterday everything was, we didn't know much information that happened yesterday, we heard nothing, I mean, from you all, from the sheriffs, I mean, again, given that he is an official, shouldn't that transparency be even?
Well, there should be transparency, but after you conduct a full investigation. Do you think it's fair that if someone makes an allegation just because they're a public servant or
Even
have,
if there wasn't an
you know,
allegation, just
or
what happened?
how can you do that without completing your investigation and putting out there allegations of this kind of a nature of sexual assault when you don't know exactly what occurred? You don't know whether these allegations are reliable. You don't know whether these allegations are true. We contend they're not. We contend they're not reliable, that it is not true. And it's just simply unfair to not only Mr. Scrivner or anyone to be throwing these allegations out there when you haven't fully vetted them and conducted an objective and a founded investigation. It's simply not fair. Would you like someone to make allegations like that against you and then the sheriff come out and say these things and you haven't, and they're not true? No, no one would appreciate that.
Well, I think the day
You know?
of that everything was happening again, no one knew anything. and
Sure.
So assumptions were made all over.
I
Not
know.
even a, yes, you know, we can say that we are representing Scrivner and this is happening, period.
I don't know what you're asking.
I was just saying nothing
Yeah,
was said.
yeah. No, I and as the sheriff said, I mean, he appreciates, and as we do, you know, the desire for the media and the public to know what's going on, to get answers. But at the same time, the answers and the explanations have to be based on a reasonable, objective, founded basis and evidence. And not just say because someone made an allegation, it has the impact of people thinking, oh, it's true. Oh, he did this, he did that. And in our criminal justice system, in my view, that's simply not appropriate. You know, it's not appropriate.
When were you alerted about the Kern County Sheriff's transfer that was going on today?
This morning, late this morning. Yeah.
Can you offer any sort of a timeline that led up to, you know, the gun and the stabbing? We don't have any times other than a phone call, you know, at 11 p.m. or so. Can you tell us how things happened based upon the information you have?
We're still in the process of looking into that.
Are you aware if he's still on suicide watch at all? What do you-
I don't have any reason to believe that. I have no information.
Talk from us.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Okay.